The featured article in audio form by Sutek Amen Ra is brought to you today by Street Culture Media. The views and opinions expressed by the author are solely theirs and do not directly reflect the views and opinions of Street Culture Media. Thank you for listening and enjoy. Peace and Black Power, family. In many of the videos I have done, and in many interviews as well, I have either started or ended them with death to the Negro. To me, the concept is very clear, but to many they are left scratching their heads, trying to figure out what in the world I'm talking about. First, you have to identify what a Negro is. Once you do that, then it becomes painfully clear why it must die. So what is a Negro? Ask yourself, if an Englishman captured a man from France and brought him to another country, would he cease to be a Frenchman? Would the son or daughter of that Frenchman lose their ancestral nationality? So why would an African from, say, Ghana, captured in the slave trade, cease to be a Ghanaian once he reached the shores of the New World? And why would their descendants lose their ancestral identity, if not by design? Shipping manifests clearly indicate where any cargo on board a vessel originated from. So why the name change? Once the African stepped off the ship, he was no longer an African, but a Negro. Realize that the first generation African did not submit quietly. They were rebellious. It wasn't until the second or third generation that the Negro identity firmly took hold. Let's examine the characteristics of the Negro and the motivation behind the indoctrination. A lot of what I will be discussing is in the Willie Lynch letter and the making of a slave. Those documents are very revealing. They should be required reading for every black child in America. Carter G. Woodson said in The Miseducation of the Negro, if you can control a man's thinking, you don't have to worry about his actions. Thus, we have uncovered the motivation behind the indoctrination. Remember, on the typical plantation in the South, the African outnumbered the Caucasian sometimes 5-1, and in several cases 20-1. That resulted in many sleepless nights for the slave master. Make no mistake about it, he feared for his life and the life of his family. Given the sizable economic investment in the African, death or debilitating punishment was not a viable or prudent option for insurrection. So he had to control the African's thinking so not to be worried about his actions. Being a Negro is a mental condition. In computer parlance, what was done to the African was to erase his hard drive and reprogram him to be a tool for the slave master and weapon against each other. This is why the Negro must die. The Nation of Islam claims that a scientist named Yaqub created the white man through grafting. Well, the white man created the Negro through brainwashing. Another penny. Suffice to say that white supremacy is the Caucasian's attempt at self-preservation, survival of the fittest, which is the first law of nature. He's not doing anything unnatural, but the Negro is guilty by exhibiting the unnatural behavior programmed on his modified hard drive. The first step in the programming process was to replace the African spirituality with religion. The deity in the new religion was intentionally designed to look like the Caucasian. Dr. John Henrik Clarke once said, if you accept an image of God from another people and the image looks like the other people and not like you, you will forever be the spiritual prisoner of the other people. I could write volumes on the damaging effect to the psyche of the African and the resulting behavior exhibited from the religious programming in regards to social, political, and economic problem solving, but I'll stop here. I'm sure you've scratched your head several times trying to figure out why we do the things we do, but the religious programming and the concept of the white, blonde-haired, blue-eyed son of God is the foundation on which the Negro programming is built. Every other dysfunction of the African is rooted in the religious programming, Christianity and Islam notwithstanding. As a result, the Negro without question submits to white authority, turns over their children to his oppressor to be educated, accepts substandard living conditions as normal, is comfortable being dependent on white supremacy for the basic economic necessities of life, and has an unchallenged faith and confidence that his oppressor has his best interest at heart. Anyone on the outside looking in at the Negro, understanding the contentious history of the African in this country, more specifically with the Caucasian, would come to the conclusion that the Negro is behaving unnaturally and outside the laws of self-preservation. I referenced earlier documents, the Willie Lynch letter and the making of a slave. Read those documents. There's enough documented and empirical evidence that prove the process described in both documents are real, regardless if the people are or are not. In the making of a slave document, you can substitute the word Negro for slave in the title. The Negro is an African with a slave mentality. The document also goes on to describe how to reverse the programming, and I must admit, it has worked in my case, and I see it working in others. I know after listening, you're waiting for me to tell you how to reverse the programming. Well, it's not going to be that easy. You have to read it for yourself. As I close, in order for the black man to live, the Negro has got to die. Death to the Negro.